His stomach dropped. The receptionist didn't know who he was. She had no idea the man standing in front of her owned the entire resort. And yet, she was talking about him like he was the worst boss on the planet, right in his face. She sighed, shaking her head. If you're staying here, I hope you don't run into the owner. He never shows up, but when he does, it's a nightmare. The words hit him like a punch. How bad could it be? What were his employees really saying about him? And why did he have a feeling this was only the beginning? It all started when David, a wealthy and successful hotel owner, decided to test his staff. His company had been running luxury resorts for years, but he always heard mixed reviews about the way employees were treated. Some guests raved about the service. Others complained about rude staff. But what about the staff themselves? What did they think about working there? David wanted to know the truth. So, for the first time in years, he booked a suite at one of his own resorts. Not as the owner. Not as the boss. Just as a regular guest. No special treatment. No recognition. Just the raw, unfiltered experience. And within minutes of checking in, he learned something he never expected. David approached the front desk, dressed casually. He didn't look like a millionaire. Just another guest. A nobody. The receptionist, a woman named Lisa, barely looked up. She was scrolling on her phone, her nails tapping against the screen. When she finally acknowledged him, her tone was flat. Checking in? David nodded. Yeah, I have a reservation for the weekend. Lisa sighed dramatically, like he'd just ruined her night. Name? David Clark. She typed something, frowning at the screen. Suite 205. She slid the key card across the counter. Here. David picked it up, hesitating. She hadn't welcomed him. She hadn't smiled. She didn't even tell him about the amenities or offer assistance. He decided to test the waters. So, is the owner ever around? Lisa's head snapped up, and she let out a dry laugh. Puffed. The owners? She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. You do not want to meet him. David raised an eyebrow. Why? Lisa glanced over her shoulder, then back at him. He's awful. Mean. Never around unless it's to yell at people. And when he does show up, we all just try to avoid him. David felt a chill run down his spine. Avoid him? He'd never yelled at anyone. Had he? Lisa kept going. He only cares about money. Staff quit all the time, but he doesn't care. The managers? They're terrified of him. You're lucky you're just a guest. David swallowed hard. How had things gotten this bad? Was this really what his employees thought of him? And if this was what Lisa was willing to say to a guest, what else was happening behind the scenes? Determined to dig deeper, David spent the next day watching everything. What he saw made his blood run cold. At the pool, a guest struggled to get a waiter's attention. The staff ignored them. When someone finally approached, they looked annoyed, barely listening. At the restaurant, servers whispered about rude customers, making fun of them under their breath. And the cleaning staff? Overworked, exhausted. He overheard two housekeepers talking in the hallway. I had to skip lunch again, one muttered. They keep piling on extra rooms. David clenched his fists. He'd built this resort to be a luxury escape, a paradise. But instead, his employees were miserable, and his guests were getting terrible service. The worst part? Nobody knew he was watching. And then, he heard something that made his heart stop. That night, David sat at the bar listening. The staff had no idea who he was. He blended in. Then, he heard Lisa's voice again. She was talking to another receptionist, laughing. I gave the guy in 205 the worst room. David froze. Her friend chuckled. Why? Lisa shrugged. He looked annoying. Besides, it's not like management cares. David's pulse pounded. This wasn't just about bad service. This was disrespect. Neglect. A toxic work environment that had gone unchecked for far too long. He had seen enough. It was time to reveal who he really was. The next morning, David put on his best suit. Walked straight to the front desk. Lisa looked up, eyes widening slightly. He saw the flash of recognition. But it was too late. Good morning, David said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm David Clark, the owner of this resort." Silence. Lisa's face turned pale. The other receptionist's jaw dropped. David took a deep breath. "I've spent the past 2 days watching everything, hearing everything, and I'm disgusted." Lisa swallowed hard. David shook his head. "Save it. We need to have a serious talk. All of us." He turned, walking toward the manager's office. It was time to fix his resort. For good. What do you think? Should David fire Lisa immediately, or give her a second chance? How would you handle this situation if you were him? Let us know in the comments. And if you love stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more.